Hi there, I'm Haruka, and I turned all the fans off in my room and it's incredibly hot in here. Because of my own professional goals of writing an anime, I have become one of those gross weebs that will actually be honest when walking into a film school class. I introduce myself, I give my major, and I give my plan for the future, which is writing an anime. And while most of the professors are actually aware of what anime is, because Ghost in the Shell, Miyazaki films, and Satoshi Kon films are actually pretty acceptable in the Western film world, they're not really familiar with the whole world that is anime. And then there's the couple of times where someone in the class actually knows what I'm talking about when I mention domestic Nakanojo. Anyway, I've been learning that suggesting anime to people is incredibly hard and really weird. Like, no joke, I had one professor who got really into Slam Dunk because I wrote a report on it. And they didn't even bat an eye at Odd Taxi, which I actually recommended even past writing that report. Which, by the way, I watched Odd Taxi finally. Excellent show. Anyway, it's also something I experience in my sports life now too, as I'm just known as the anime person at stuff. Someone has to put together a real way to introduce anime to someone and do it in the right way that doesn't scare them. You can't go too basic without sounding like an absolute dweeb. Naruto and Death Note may be classics, but I've never seen them, and if someone suggested them to me, my brain would shut down and put up an armed perimeter. But you can't also throw them in the deep end. I had a friend who ran a comic book store, and he told me about how the only anime he ever saw was about a person who reincarnated into a train. Still haven't found the anime, sounds interesting. And you can't just tell them Boku no Pico because that joke is old at this point, and maybe that person is smart enough to check Wikipedia and realize that they didn't actually receive a recommendation and suddenly they're just not watching anime now. That person was me. In fact, let me take you on my journey to anime through 4 anime. Fairy Tail. Now, I grew up on Cap and Mikey, my mom's favorite anime, and Cowboy Bebop, another show my mom liked. And one day in high school, when Attack on Titan was getting big, also another show that my mom liked, I decided that I wanted to start watching anime, so I asked an upperclassman what I should watch. She told me to watch Fairy Tail. I did watch it, I got my mom to read the manga, and I got about 3 seasons in. And I did not give a shit about any of the characters. It was formulaic, it was boring, and all the backstory was so cliche that I didn't want to deal with that anymore. And my mom also has no memory of the actual story, only that she also got pretty far into the manga and realized she didn't care. So for years, I did not watch anime again. Until Princess 9. I stumbled on this show while researching the most convincible reason I could find for writing a Dutch girl to be a big baseball fan. I decided she was a weeb, and her aunt bought her a copy of this anime. And I decided to watch it myself since the whole show was on YouTube for free. It still is. I watched it, and for some reason, it hooked me. Sarah Morimura is still a top best girl for me, and you can see that influence in other best girls that I love. The story of Azumi's stubborn refusal to back down to Ryo was so much more compelling than any power of friendship story, and the weirdly messy love triangle was just so interesting to see play out. After watching this show, I was finally open to anime again and was ready for any contenders, and someone just happened to walk in front of me at the right place at the right time. They had a profile picture of an anime girl, and I just decided to ask who it was, and that was Bunny Girl Senpai. By the end of the first episode, I was completely on board with becoming a weeb. The second episode had me close to tears. The Kaide Quest arc has ruined my very psyche forever to the point that seeing a panda sends me into a spiral of existential depression. I loved this show, I still love it. It was exactly what I needed to see, that anime was so much more than what it looked like from the outside. When I watched Cowboy Bebop or Miyazaki, it was just cinema. When I watched Fairy Tail, it was honestly just Miyazaki was screaming. All these sci-fi and fantasy elements were what I thought was standard for anime. But watching Princess 9 influenced me to come back because of the interesting relationship dynamics. And Bunny Girl Senpai took everything that I knew about anime and shattered it, saying that there was so much to this world that I had yet to know. That this was a space where so much more could be explored without the need for magic or heavy world building. That normal people can be compelling characters in this format. But it was still a precipice. I was on a high, but my weebdom had yet to be solidified. But the next suggestion was absolutely the point of no return. Toradora. So much can be said about this show, but I'll be honest, I almost gave up after 3 episodes. It starts kind of slow and boring, and you have to wait for characters to be established before they start taking you places. I think that if I did, that might have set a very bad precedent for me personally, and I might have ended up wandering around looking for something exactly the same as Bunny Girl, only to come up empty-handed. I took that religious moment I had when watching Bunny Girl and grounded it even further. I grew up with chick flicks that my sister would force me to watch, and for a while I'd go check out Oscar bait movies from the library, and there's always these themes of cheesy romance in them. Maybe I was influenced by that, but I felt comfortable watching this show. It was familiar. And when it comes down to it, Toradora isn't that implausible of a story. It is set in the real world. It is set in reality. Bunny Girl, while realistic, still had that slight bit of fantasy in it, and Toradora grounded the concept of anime for me even further. Anime had taken hold in me, and I was ready to follow it wherever it took me. The sequence after that is unimportant, but the follow-up of Toradora to solidify what anime could do was incredibly important in gaining my loyalty and interest to the art form. So, it's hard to get people into anime. Why? Anime is weird. Here's some common things that are mentioned all the time. Cartoons are for kids. This is mostly from the older generation who did grow up with Saturday morning cartoons. Sometimes there'd be a Sailor Moon or DBZ, but there's the age-old saying of, you'll grow out of it. And despite what you say, some people are going to look at a drawing and think that it's for kids. I know what hentai is, and that's hentai. This definitely comes from the younger generations who have a very strong knowledge of the internet. It's something that's weirdly ubiquitous on the internet, and especially in a lot of concerning communities. This is something that stems more from the public's distaste for sex work in general, which is a whole other issue. But at the end of the day, they're just not going to take you seriously if you put a drawing of an anime girl in front of them. The concepts are just too weird. This is a shout out to comic book store guy who had the great misfortune to be given something weird, and it exemplifies just how weird some things are. There is a massive cultural gap between the East and the West, and even more specifically, America and Japan. America likes violence and guns, but refuses to acknowledge sex even in an educational setting. Meanwhile, Japan actually avoids showing major displays of violence in film, while surprisingly being one of the most open countries when it comes to discussing sexuality, although, you know, whether they're accepting of that sexuality is a different story altogether. There's also just such an unspoken language in anime where there's a few different levels you have to go down in order to fully appreciate it. Konosuba is fun and enjoyable to a point, but only fully becomes the absolute knee slapper it is if you understand the isekai and JRPG genres. So what would my responses to these things be? The first two comments contradict. Like, it can't just be hentai and kidsos, am I right? There's a massive spectrum. There's certain degrees to the point where there's actually an anime word that I love that exists for this exact reason: ecchi. It's not explicit, but it is very horny. And it's a very specific ballpark that I like playing in when it comes to what I enjoy watching. Anyway, that's a story for another time, but the point is that there's more serious shows. There's all kinds of things for everyone. Which leads to the next point. Anime is a medium, not a genre. People like to make anime out to be a genre in itself, but you have to recognize that it isn't. There's multiple perceptions of anime that always get amalgamated into a parody of anime. Stuff like big robots, high school girls with oversized boobs, and the weird battle shonen tropes that I'm not even going to talk about, but all of those happen in different places. Unless you're watching the Jaden Smith anime, or I guess Evangelion? Wow. But the key thing that brought me into anime was learning that it was more than just one thing. I found the part of anime that I liked and wanted to stick near. And while I absolutely venture out of it, most of my favorites stay in that realm of realism and relationship drama. And you gotta realize that the most popular anime in Japan is Despicable Me, because anime just means animation. It's like seeing Harry Kane and thinking that he stands for all athletes. This man isn't even the best on his own team. But still, don't throw the weird genres at them first. While I love them so much and talk about them way too much, it's not a good idea to start people off with Domestic Hanjo or one of my favorite manga ever, J.K. Haru wa Isekai de Shofu ni Natta. I actually did a script adaptation for J.K. Haru for a class, and it was surprisingly well received. Also, whenever I get drunk enough at like a soccer game, I just talk about J.K. Haru. I don't know why, but it's just not a good idea to throw concepts at people that are jarring. Even much more tame stuff like Higehiro or the aforementioned Konosuba aren't gonna be consumed by those new to things. You need something familiar, but not too familiar. And that leads into the next phase of this video, deciding what angle to take. When you introduce an entire medium to someone that they think is just a genre, you need to find a way in for them instead of just tossing them in and saying good luck. Find what movies or shows they like. The thing I always find an issue with is the people who just ask you, hey, what anime should I watch? And don't give something that they already like as an example. Even if it's better for them to find something out of their comfort zone, you should at least be aware of where that zone is so you know where to find something that's like at least somewhat adjacent to that zone. And you know what? Compare those things to things that they already know. While there are some genres in anime that are pretty exclusive to anime, you can compare anime to things they already know. Harem is a very anime genre, but if they like a comedy with a bit of a love story in it, that's a genre that can connect with them. Here's a few basic examples of things that you can suggest to a brand new anime person, and a follow-up for them to watch if they like the first thing. Attack on Titan, followed up by Kimetsu no Yaiba. This is your basic modern shonen package. Attack on Titan is an anime that they probably have heard of, as its popularity reached outside of the anime world, and the drama, themes, and action are all accessible outside of Japan, with some slight issues, but that's not until much later in the story. Demon Slayer is a great follow-up because it goes from a much more Eurocentric setting to a Japanese one, while still retaining that action, and it adds a bit of comedy into the mix as well. One Punch Man followed up by Sakamoto Desuga? For those who want straight up comedy, it's pretty hard to find a simple comedy anime that's like good for like stepping into it, but this is what I've got. One Punch is another anime that is well known outside of the anime world. It has action and a lot of comedy, and superheroes, which is incredibly accessible for our Marvel/DC saturated world. Sakamoto is a bit harder to get into, but it runs along the same lines as One Punch in that the main character is perfect, and that's the joke. I personally haven't watched it, but it fits so well in the same vibe of One Punch if you just read those descriptions. Kaguya-sama followed up by Komi-san. If this person seems a bit more open to rom-com type stuff, this is the way to go. Although this is how I got my mom into rom-com manga, and she was coming off of Cowboy Bebop, Titan, and FMA, so you never know what a person will like. Kaguya-sama is just an over-the-top comedy with love as not really a central theme and more as a central plot point. This is really just the other direction to take someone who likes comedy. Komi-san is the perfect follow-up because it's much less over the top, but it plays with the same rom-com vibes, as well as sharing a large portion of their fan bases. If people who are already weebs already love both of these at the same time, then I think that you can bring in a new person, they'll love both of them. Fruits Basket followed up by Horimiya. This is for those who want straight romance. If you want Yuri romance, that's a different video. And if you want yaoi, we will politely yet firmly show you the door. Just kidding, Yuri does not exist without yaoi. Merry Pride. Fruits Basket is one of the most basic romance anime ever made, so much so that I knew girls in high school who would actually read the manga, but since I wasn't into anime back then, I didn't really know if they liked other things. I've also heard that it's one of the most beloved romance anime ever made, so this should hold their attention. And Horimiya, one I've actually seen, is one of the most popular modern romance manga, you know, recent years stuff. And the anime itself is fun, light, and gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling. Finally, K-On! Followed up by Shirobako. I honestly have no clue how you figure out someone is right for this category. It's kind of more of a feeling. This is the slice of life cute girls do things category. I feel like this is what you should give to someone who really liked Western animation when they were a kid, because it's got those same sort of vibes. I mean, SpongeBob is basically a slice of life show. Honestly, I think I would have been perfect for this category if I was the one hoping to get told about anime. K-On! Is one of the most influential anime of all time, and you cannot tell me anything different, but it's also an incredible hit or miss with people, so you gotta really know if the person you're giving this to can handle just a lot of sitting around and drinking tea. This show is probably addicting enough to get them hooked on anime, but Shirobako takes the K-On! Format and grounds it into a professional industry. This is the one package that might be a bit of whiplash because Shirobako is much more adult, but it has the same vibes. The point is to get the person interested in wanting to explore and watch more. And that's what this whole video has been about. We want to share and talk about the things we enjoy, but when people ask what they should do to get into what we like, we're a bit too far into the deep end to remember where the shallow end even is. And while you can say that any niche has this sort of learning curve, anime is a bit unique in that its reputation is stuffed well out into the deep end, and not the much more accessible shallow end. So when you're asked by a film school professor or a random soccer fan what they should watch, remember this video and give them something they'll like. Or they won't like, because even if they don't like it, it won't mean that they won't look for other stuff. But never tell them to watch Fairy Tail. No one should ever watch Fairy Tail. This video is actually sponsored by Lucky Cat Sticker Company. Go grab some damn stickers. Buy them. Just buy them. Slap on your laptop. Slap in your car. Slap on your own face. I don't care. Just buy them. If you buy them, I get money and I need money. Go to luckycatsclub.com and enter the code JOCK for 15% off. That's JOCK JOCK for 15% off at luckycatsclub.com. You put that in, I get some of the money. Link in the description. Thank you.